Hello and welcome to this demo of AutoElevate. AutoElevate is one of CyberFOX's privilege management solutions. Today we're going to be covering some basic features and functionality of the platform, some of the challenges that we solve for, and essentially how the application works. So we're going to start with the dashboard and just a basic architecture of AutoElevate. So AutoElevate is an agent-based solution. It allows us to intercept UAC requests when privilege is needed for Windows. Now, the other things that we can do with this agent is we can ensure that UAC is set to Microsoft best practices. In addition, the system can also remove local admin privilege and demote any accounts down to standard users. We'll be covering a little bit of all of that as we go through our demo today. So let's start with the dashboard. So the first thing we're going to do in deploying the AutoElevate agent is to put the system into audit mode, right? So audit mode is essentially a do no harm. There's no pop-ups, notifications. It doesn't require a reboot or anything like that, but it just wants to sit there and listen and report back on a few different things. The first thing is where our systems don't meet Microsoft best practices. So where do we have UAC turned off, for example, or where the settings for UAC would be considered to be too low. So anything, say, UAC level 2 and below, really not recommended. We really want to see things at UAC level 4 for users and level 3 for admins. And then most importantly is going to be this one, is understanding where we still have systems that have local admin access. And we want to ultimately work to demote those users down to standard users per Microsoft best practices. Now, ideally what we're going to do is while we're in audit mode, we're going to be listening for those UAC events to be occurring. So that way we can get a good baseline of what folks are trying to do. Are they trying to access parts of the operating system and that's being prompt for privilege? Or are they trying to install applications or uninstall? Or are they trying to do updates? And so we want to make sure that we're actually monitoring for a lot of those events. And so we can see what people are doing, what they're trying to do, what vendors they're trying to work with, and the different options they're trying to, trying to request privilege for. Ideally, what we want to do is, as those events are coming in and we're starting to get a good library of events from the agents that are out there, we have a good understanding of where we need to turn up UAC. So we're going to want to do that so that we can start capturing these events. And then we can start evaluating those. Ultimately, we want to turn those into a rule. The policies are where the automation begins, right? And that allows us to create a rule set or a policy that allows us to say, yes, you can do this thing. No, you cannot. And we want to make policy creation really, really simple and easy for you. So we can say, hey, I want to convert an event that we've seen. See a lot of people doing this. Maybe it's an update or a control or something they should or shouldn't be able to do. We can provide a status for that and say, yes, you're allowed to do that. No, you're not. That way, when we move to what we would call live mode, where we're actually fielding requests and our policies are running, we want to have the system to be able to disposition a lot of those for us, let the user do what they need to do with as little interruption as possible. Once those rules are created, we can expand the rule capability. So some of the really nice pieces is we can look at things that might be coming in from a particular vendor. Like in this case, it might be Oracle, or it could be people doing stuff within Microsoft. What is it that we want to allow them to do? And do we want to sort of cast a larger net? So the rules allow us to insert some wildcards. I could say, sure, anything from Java in this instance might be okay, or we could lock things down to certified vendors, where the cert's verified and everything is good. We can even say, look, any part of that certification, we want to make sure these things match. And if they do, we're okay with letting this go, or maybe, hey, we have to disposition these, or we don't want to let you necessarily do this. And this works on Windows controls and things like that. So when we're looking at our systems, we can see, all the systems that are out in technician mode. We can see systems that are in our any number of current policy modes. So there are a few different agent modes and ways that it will operate. The first one being our default mode during installation, which is audits. That's going to be getting your security posture, where's UAC, how many admins. We can then move folks as a sort of staged rollout into maybe a policy mode where the system is just running policies, but it's not necessarily fielding any requests to technicians to say yes or no or provide privilege access when it's needed. It's just going to operate on the policies that have been created. And then, and this is a good mode where if we haven't removed those admin accounts yet, UAC is still coming up, but the user is able to get past it. And ultimately, we're gonna remove those admins by turning our admin mode on, demoting all of those users so that we set to live mode. And that's when all of those requests UAC are going to come into the console and allow us to disposition those where it's required. Now, what we want to do is provide what we would consider to be a delightful experience for our end users, right? So when we start to turn up security, unfortunately, a lot of times what ends up happening is we start to really upset our end user base because now they're getting prompted for privileged access. They're not allowed to do those things. And they, and you got to log on and provide your credentials and give them the ability to continue forward and do their job. So what I want to do is I want to show a little bit of how the system's going to interact with users, how the agent will talk to folks, and how we can disposition requests virtually instantly if we need to, and we can say yes or no at the time and let the system provide privilege when it's appropriate. So let's go to standard user desktop, and we'll take a look at how those interactions are actually going to play out. So the first thing I want to do is like the typical scenario, right? End users out there, they probably use some applications at home and they're like, oh, I really like that. I'm going to go install that on my computer at work. It hasn't blown up my home computer, so it should be fine. And so they go and they download some program from who knows where. And they want to go ahead and install that on their machine. So the first thing that we're going to do is Windows is going to come up, prompt for privilege, because we have ultimately moved them into a mode where they're a standard user, and now our system can start to field those requests. So it is going to ask them, hey, are you sure you actually want to do that? So a point of notice here is you can brand all of this, right? So make sure that they see your name or your logos and things like that, so they know this is legitimate and it's actually coming from you and not from some other potentially malicious source. So in this case, now it doesn't matter whether they answer yes or no. We have captured this UAC event and recorded it. So we know who's doing it, we know what system or what company it's coming from, and so we can disposition it accordingly. Now they can, of course, there are a lot of times they're going to go, yes, of course, I would like to do this. And then the system's going to say, hey, hold on a second. I need to make sure that this is okay. In this case, we don't have a policy for this particular program. Maybe it's something we're just not familiar with. It's kind of an out-of-band request. So as mentioned, we want to communicate with the end user. We want to let them know that this is, this is normal. This is us working to keep you protected. Potentially, you could even send this over to a PSA where it could generate a service ticket. We have a number of integrations, your typical PSAs, Synchro, ConnectWise, Autotask, Kaseya, things like that, where we can, API over and create a service ticket and then allow somebody from the ticketing system to be notified so that they know they've got a request that they need to manage. But it also lets the customer know, hey, we're working on it. We're really concerned about your security and want to make sure this is okay. So in this case, we can let the customer go back to doing what they were doing, and the request is going to come into the admin portal so that somebody can go in and then disposition that request. So the first thing we want to do is look at, okay, let's go see what's in here and take a look at that particular request and decide what we want to do with it. So I want to get a little more detail on this. I'm looking at TE setup. Maybe I'm not sure what that is. So let's drill down a bit deeper. So this is going to let me know, because this is a true multi-tenanted system. It's designed for MSPs and to have multiple customers, tenants, locations, things like that in here. So we're going to look at, where is this coming from? Who's trying to do this? When were they trying to do it? And then ultimately, we wanted to find out some information about the app itself. So we say, I know what app this is. I know the vendor, the publisher. I know where they're running it from. Maybe that's a little awkward. At the same time, I can do a quick check of security posture on the machine. So, hey, does Windows think there's AV enabled? Is it up to date or out of date? Right? Are we using system restore? Is Windows Update turned on? Right? And then these variables will change depending on how you've configured the Windows environment. The one that's really important here is the publisher cert. So I want to make sure this application's actually verified. So we use virus totals and we check the certification. And then we want to make sure that nobody else has reported this as a potentially malicious package. We're using the hash, and we're going to go check virus totals now, of which we provide a subscription to. And we can go see the details about it, the relations behavior of the package. Has anybody reported anything? Generally speaking, anything more than about one reporting something as malicious is a pretty big red flag. We probably don't want to do that. In this case, we see that there is one vendor that said there could be something wrong with this. The other thing that I'm concerned about too is this is not verified. So in this case, I'm not inclined to let this customer kind of do this just yet. And I'm not necessarily sure I want to create a rule until I've done some more investigation. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and deny this. Now, again, we're trying to make policy creation easy so you can generate as much automation as quickly as possible. In this scenario, I'm just going to deny this request one time, but I could use any option to create a rule. And we can create rules at the computer level, location, company, or for everybody globally. There's just certain things we just don't want anybody to do. This is also a hierarchy. So in this case, the computer would override a rule that might be at the location already. So maybe I want to let the CEO do something, but I don't want to let everybody else do it. The same would go, location would override, some rules at the company level, and the company would override all companies. So it works in a hierarchy. So in this case, I'm going to say, you know what? I don't feel good about it. I'm not going to let this one fly. So now, an important security note. Once this request has been dispositioned, nobody can come back after the fact and change my decision. So in this case, I have denied it. Somebody can't come back in later and go, oh, well, that's my buddy. I'm going to let him do it. And then change the disposition and say, yeah, sure, go ahead. That doesn't work. So now I've denied this. There is a recording of both the event coming in as a request, somebody's trying to ask for privilege elevation, our disposition of that request, and of course, in our event logs, the event has occurred, we've recorded it, and we know who it's been recorded and who's done it. Now, let's go back to the computer. So now the end user is being notified. So again, I always encourage everybody to, put some really, some good messaging in here. Let them know why it was approved or why it was denied, or that you're actually working on it. But it's your way to communicate with them without you having to be there and explain it. The other thing too is it's got your logo in here, and you can make sure that people are like, okay, this is legit. I'm all right with this. So in this case, we didn't let them run it. We're not good with this, and there's a ticket for that. They could go check the ticket. You maybe send them to your help desk if they have further questions, or they realize, hey, I probably shouldn't do that. Or hey, take them to your cybersecurity page, or if they need additional assistance, the ways to get a hold of you. Just a great way to communicate. So in that case, that one's denied. They're not allowed to run it, and we're saying, hey, sorry, we can't grant a privilege at this time. Now, let's do a little different scenario. All right, something that might be a little bit more legitimate, but it might be something that's a little out of band, something you haven't seen yet. So there's no policy there for it. So in this case, I'm going to come in and run this application. So again, user access control is going to come in. We're going to intercept that request and say, hey, confirm. Are you sure you want to do this? Of course, most end users are going to go, yeah, absolutely, I want to do this. And then we're gonna go into that process again. Now, this is notified, me and my mobile app. There's a mobile app for this. I have an Apple Watch, so of course my Apple Watch is going off, letting me know I've got a live request. Somebody's trying to request privilege right now, and that way, if I wanted to, I could just disposition right away and say, sure, go ahead, or no, you can't. In this case, we've generated a ticket. We've let them know we're working on it. We'll let you know as soon as possible. So let's go take a look at this request now. It's a little bit different. So now I'm going to go look at that one. And again, I want to do my basic checks. I know where it's coming from. I'm familiar with this application. I know what they're trying to do. Importantly, the security posture looks good. And then, of course, now this is where I'm looking for. So this cert is actually verified. No scans have indicated any malware. Maybe I'm familiar with the application. I feel pretty good about it. Maybe it's a one-off thing. Don't necessarily need to create a rule, but you could. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and approve it. Now, in this approval, you can do a couple different things. Again, I can create a rule. So if I want to say, yes, maybe this computer could always do this, or maybe the location of the company, sure, this is going to be okay for you guys. You can do that. You can also elevate this in the context of either the administrator, or you can do it in the context of the user. There are still some applications out there that install items in the user profile, and they have to be updated in context of the user. So you have the ability to do that. In this case, this particular request, I can just use the standard admin elevation, go ahead and approve that. Again, you cannot change my disposition. I've approved it. They are now allowed to run it. In this case, I have just approved it one time. So that is going to allow them to run this application, installer, update, whatever the case is, or maybe access to some place in the operating system that privilege is required, but I'm only going to allow it one time. So now the interaction is going to come back and talk to the end user. Hey, you can proceed. You're okay. This is good. We're going to let it go. Now, they have a couple options here. They could say, oh, well, I'm really busy. Maybe I'm in the middle of a Zoom call right now. And so I want to do this later. So they could push this off. Again, that approval is going to remain. They're allowed to do this one time. In this case, we're okay with it. Let's go ahead. So I'm ready. Let's do it. Again, going to prompt for access. Now we're just going to go ahead and provide privilege for them and let them actually go ahead with the installation or update or whatever they were trying to do. Now, what happened in the background, and the thing that you can't see, is a local admin account was rotated in, and a randomized password was created. Obviously, you can't see any of that happening, so somebody couldn't take a screenshot of it. You're not sitting there on remote control typing your user account, and they can see, what your username is and how many characters your password are and things like that. We don't want to give anybody that kind of ability. So we want to make sure that this happens behind the scenes. We rotated an admin account in. We satisfy Windows need for privilege. Once that is granted, UAC is satisfied, we delete everything. So even if you were to try to go back and look at user control panel, anything later on, nothing would be there. And then they can just move forward with their process and get their job done. Now, ideally, the more things that we write policies and rules for are the things that the automation will just go ahead and disposition for us based on the rules that we set. So let's say that I had to do a Java update. Everybody says these are fine. It's no problem. We've got a rule created for it. So I go ahead to run that update. Again, UAC is going to say, hey, we need privilege. Our system's going to grant that privilege, rotate in user account and password, randomized, grant privilege, delete and remove, so that there is nothing there that they could go back to try to reference later, and the customer can simply move forward and continue with their update, their process, whatever they were working on. And that's the kind of experience you want to create, because once we start turning security up, and I don't have access, people get frustrated really quickly, and then they start opening up tickets, and then we have to disposition and go, put our usernames and our passwords in and things like that. It can be a very time-consuming process for something ideally that just could be really, really simple, and I could just do with the click of a button and just say yes or no. So that's the interaction with, when users are doing something, when policies are running, and we want to say yes or no to something that might be happening literally in real time, right? And we can go ahead and disposition that. Now, there's another mode that I want to talk about, and this mode is really important because this mode, it's called Technician Mode. And what Technician Mode allows us to do is essentially allow our engineering team, our technicians, to do admin level work, but not actually have any admin access at all. So you see, I'm still a standard user. I'm still logged into the same machine. But this time, let's go put it in Technician Mode. So it's going to give me a QR code. And the one thing you can't see right now is I'm going into my AutoElevate mobile app. Now, this is just one way to do this. And what that knows, my app knows I'm authenticated as me, and it knows I have the ability to do this and my permissions and everything like that. I'm going to pull up my little AutoElevate QR code reader, scan that. It's going to authenticate me. And now I have Technician Mode access. So if I were installing something or I needed to do a bunch of work on this machine, I don't have to run back and forth between approving those requests in the portal and actually waiting for those responses to come up here. I can work on stuff in real time. So now let's say that I've got to get into the registry. Normally, this is not going to be allowed. So let's go do the registry editor really quick. Of course, UAC is going to step in and say, hey, are you sure? And I need some admin elevation to allow this to happen. You'll notice the new sidecar window here. This is a quick box that tells the technician, hey, quick security posture update. In this case, no publisher is okay because it's a Windows control. I'm fine with that, but I do need to get in the registry. I am not an admin on this machine, and I'm not typing in a username and password because I don't have admin access. But you can just go admin elevation. System's going to go ahead, rotate in that username and password, grant me access to satisfy Windows need for privilege, and allow me into the areas that I need to get into. Now, here's the other really nice part about that is back here inside of AutoElevate, we have recorded that event has taken place. You can see right there, I'm in Technician Mode, who I am, and this is what I'm doing. And you can see I went in and got into the registry. So not only can I allow them to do administrative work and get in and do the things they do, not give them admin access, even on servers, workstations. I don't have to have a backdoor admin account to do this. I'm simply granting elevation and privilege at the time it's required, and I'm recording the event took place. So now technician can do their work. I don't have to put my username and password in because I don't have access in the first place, but I can still get the job done. It's especially nice for little things too. Like I was doing a software update, and there was a bunch of plugins that had to be installed, and every single plugin that had to be installed required admin privilege, and I have to put my username in and my password, and I've got to do this 5, 6, 7, 8 times. In this case, you never have to do that. If I want to install something, even if there's a policy or anything like that, I can let Technician Mode can go in and take care of that right away and say, well, you saw me deny this earlier, but I'm going to go ahead and grant admin elevation. I'm going to go ahead and install it because I've checked this out and I think it's okay. Now, when we're all done doing our work as an engineer, now you could do this on a remote control session with someone. You could, if you're doing a site visit and you're there at their desk, again, we're just playing over the shoulder admin for you. Or you could be on a server and I've got to do an update or change some registry or run PowerShell or get into the command line to do something. We can automatically give you that admin elevation that's needed without giving that person an admin account, so that if that person were to leave, they don't have all the keys to the kingdom, right? We don't have to go rotate all of our customer user accounts and passwords. I simply cut off your AutoElevate access and you no longer have access to do that work. When I'm done now, I can go ahead and say, let's go ahead and put this back into live mode, which is that policy is running. And any live requests now are going to get fielded and sent back into the admin portal or the mobile app for somebody to go ahead and do those dispositions again. So I'm all done with tech mode. I walk away, close my remote control session out, whatever the case may be. The system goes back to its regular secure behavior and fielding requests up the way it's supposed to. If I were to forget, it does have a timer, so it'll automatically time out, and then I don't have to worry about anybody having any additional access or anything like that. All right, so hopefully you found that informative and helpful. If you want to learn more, reach out, check out our website, cyberfox.com. You can request a trial if you want to investigate a little bit further. We can sit down and do a demonstration one-on-one, answer any additional questions or anything about the platform. But hopefully we look forward to hearing from you real soon.